Good morning. Today is Wednesday, Gimel Adar Base. Today we're going to do Discourse 5 in this book called Teachings of the Rebbe 5711. It's the first year that the Rebbe was Rebbe. This was delivered on Purim 5711. Entitled VeKeebel HaYehudim es asher Hecheilu la'asos, translated as the Jews undertook that which they had begun to do. It's a bit long, 12 chapters in this Maamer, so I'm going to split it into two portions, 6 today and then 6 another day. So let's dive right in. With the grace of Hashem, blessed is He. The verse states, the Jews undertook that which they had begun to do. His Honorable Holiness, my father-in-law, the Rebbe, explains this in his discourse that begins with these words, recently printed and publicized. That is, the Jews undertook that which they had begun at the time of the giving of the Torah. For when the Jewish people said, all that Hashem has spoken, we will do and we will hear, that was only the beginning that they had begun to do. It was specifically in the days of Achashverosh, during the period of the decree of Haman, that the undertaking, the Kabbalah, took place. As it states, the Jews undertook VeKeebel HaYehudim. Now, in his discourse, he analyzes this with precision, since at first glance, this is an extremely wondrous thing. For during the time of the giving of the Torah, the Jewish people were in a state of the utmost elevation. And this is true both physically, that they were in an extremely prosperous and excellent state on account of their freedom, and also spiritually, that they had a revelation of the loftiest level of godliness. In contrast, in the days of Achashverosh, the Jewish people were in a state of ultimate descent. For in addition to the concealment and hiddenness that takes place in all exiles, during which time darkness covers the whole earth, nevertheless, during that time of the decree of Haman, there was an even greater concealment and hiddenness. For even physically, they were in a state of utmost lowliness, that there was a decree to destroy, to slay, and to exterminate all the Jews from young to old, children and women in one day. Even so, during the time of the giving of the Torah, when the Jewish people were in a state of utmost elevation, that was only the beginning, what they had begun to do. Whereas in the time of the decree of Haman, when they were in a state of the utmost lowliness, it was specifically then that they undertook to do that which they had begun at the giving of the Torah. He continues and explains that during the time of the decree, their fulfillment of Torah and mitzvahs was in a way of self-sacrifice, Mesiras Nefesh. To further clarify, it is explained in Torah R that the self-sacrifice, the Mesiras Nefesh they had, was as follows. If they would have renounced their faith, nothing would have been done to them, since the decree was only against the Jews. Nevertheless, it never entered their minds to consider such a thing, God forbid. Moreover, it is further explained that their self-sacrifice was not only to not renounce the true faith in Hashem, God forbid, but also that they had literal self-sacrifice in the fulfillment of Torah and mitzvahs, to the extent that they publicly gathered by the multitudes to study Torah with self-sacrifice. The awakening of their self-sacrifice, Mesiras Nefesh, was through Mordechai HaYehudi, Mordechai the Jew, who is called the Moshe of his generation, who publicly gathered the multitudes to strengthen their faith, Emunah. However, Mordechai's principal work is that he taught and studied Torah with the school children, who are the foundation of the whole Jewish people. This is explained at length in the discourse about the great level of the breadth of school children when they learn Torah. This is as stated in Midrash, that Mordechai gathered 22,000 pupils and taught them Torah with self-sacrifice. When Haman arrived, Mordechai instructed them, run away so as not to be burned by my coals. They responded, we stand together with you, whether for life or for death. In other words, they accepted upon themselves whatever punishment might come, so long as they would not be separated from the Holy Torah. This then is what is meant by the fact that they undertook that which they had begun to do, and that the giving of the Torah was only the beginning, whereas the undertaking was at the time of the decree of Haman. For through the actual self-sacrifice, Mesiras Nefesh that they had for the fulfillment of Torah and mitzvahs, they were elevated in a certain respect to an even higher level than at the time of the giving of the Torah. This is the reason why the undertaking, the Kabbalah, was specifically then such that it states the Jews undertook that which they had begun to do. Now, chapter 2. Now, we must further understand this, for the main point of the explanation in the discourse is that the reason that this undertaking occurred at the time of the decree was because of their self-sacrifice at that time. This being the case, of what relevance is it that their awakening to self-sacrifice was by the hand of Mordechai, or that his primary work was learning Torah with the school children? We also must explain why it was specified at the beginning of the discourse that at the giving of the Torah, the Jewish people were in the most elevated state, whereas at the time of the decree, they were in a state of utmost lowliness, both spiritually and physically. At first glance, when we examine the discourse, it explains how it was that when they were at the height of elevation, it was only the beginning, whereas when they were in the utmost lowliness, that is specifically when they took on this undertaking. The relevance of their elevation or lowliness thus makes sense in that it relates to their spiritual standing. However, to what end does the discourse specify their physical elevation at the time of the giving of the Torah and their physical lowliness at the time of the decree? Chapter 3. Now, in addition to the points mentioned above, we must also understand the general theme of the explanation in the discourse, namely that the reason the undertaking specifically took place at the time of the decree is because of their self-sacrifice for Torah and mitzvahs at that time. Now, this must be better understood. For a first glance, regarding almost all the commandments, the verse states, "You shall live by them." Even the 3 cardinal commandments about which it states one should rather be killed than to transgress are not actually one and the same as the matter of self-sacrifice, Mesiras Nefesh. Rather, it only is that the manner of fulfilling these commandments entails that one must never transgress them, even if it means that they will all be killed as a result of it. Whereas the commandment of self-sacrifice, Mesiras Nefesh, for the sanctification of the name of Hashem, blessed is He, is only a single commandment. Why then is this self-sacrifice a prerequisite to the undertaking that the Jews undertook of the Torah as a whole? Now, it does state in Tanya that the reason that Moshe commanded the generation that was entering the land of Israel to recite the Shema twice daily and to accept the yoke of the kingdom of heaven upon themselves with self-sacrifice is because the fulfillment of Torah and mitzvahs is dependent upon the constant remembrance of the matter of self-sacrifice of one's soul to Hashem, blessed is He. This is so, even though He also promised them that Hashem your God shall place the fear of you and the dread of you upon all the land that you shall tread upon, etc. However, what we see from this is that the self-sacrifice, the Mesiras Nefesh, upon which the fulfillment of Torah and mitzvahs are dependent, is self-sacrifice in potential, b'koyach, rather than self-sacrifice in actuality, b'poel. In other words, if he should ever need to have self-sacrifice in fulfilling Torah and mitzvahs, he is prepared to do so. This being so, then even at the giving of the Torah, when the Jewish people said, "All that Hashem has spoken, we will do and we will hear," and certainly after they were commanded the mitzvah of Shema recital twice daily, they accepted upon themselves to fulfill all that they were commanded, even if it would require self-sacrifice. However, even so, the undertaking when the Jews undertook was not complete until the time of the decree of Haman, when they had self-sacrifice in actuality, b'poel. Now, it is generally known that there were 2 times in history that the Jewish people as a whole had actual self-sacrifice for Torah and mitzvahs. One was on Hanukkah at the time of the decree of the Greeks, and the other was on Purim at the time of the decree of Haman. Since all matters in Torah are with ultimate precisions, we must say that the fact that this matter of the Jews undertook was specifically accomplished through the self-sacrifice of Purim was not only because the self-sacrifice of Purim preceded the self-sacrifice of Hanukkah, but also because the self-sacrifice of Purim was more closely related to the completion of receiving the Torah. We must therefore understand the difference between the self-sacrifice of Hanukkah and the self-sacrifice of Purim, for it is due to this difference that the completion of the receiving of the Torah occurred specifically by means of the self-sacrifice of Purim. Chapter 4. Now, this will be understood by prefacing with a well-known explanation regarding the novelty that occurred with the giving of the Torah in comparison to the Torah and commandments as they were before the giving of the Torah. That is, the mitzvahs that were fulfilled by our forefathers, peace be upon them, and in general all those who preceded the giving of the Torah, were only performed and fulfilled spiritually, such as tefillin, through which we recall the exodus from Egypt, whereas at the time the exile in Egypt had not yet happened, and even in the commandments that they fulfilled physically, the drawing forth of holiness, Kedusha, only occurred spiritually and was not transferred to the physical object through which the mitzvah was done. For before the giving of the Torah there was a divine edict that the upper ones shall not descend below and the lower ones shall not ascend above. Therefore there was no bond between the holiness of the mitzvah, the upper ones, with the physical object through which the mitzvah was performed, the lower ones. This is not the case with the mitzvahs that follow the giving of the Torah. For at that time, the divine edict that separated between the upper and the lower ones was nullified, and a bond was made between the physical object through which the mitzvah is performed and the holiness, kedusha, of the mitzvah. This is to such a degree that in some mitzvahs the physical object becomes a holy mitzvah object. Now since, as known, a bond between two opposites only happens through something that is higher than both, it therefore is understood that the bond between the upper ones and the lower ones that came about at the giving of the Torah was because the giving of the Torah was drawing forth of the unlimited light of Hashem, who transcends the categories of up and down altogether. What we understand from all this is that there are three aspects in the commandments, in the mitzvahs, after the giving of the Torah. There is the aspect of below, for even after the giving of the Torah, the physical object with which the mitzvah is done is not transformed into spirituality, but remains physical, even though it now has become a holy mitzvah object. The second is the aspect of above. For even after the giving of the Torah, when the holiness of the mitzvah is drawn forth and embedded in the physical object, nonetheless the holiness itself remains spiritual. The third and highest aspect is the nullification of above and below, since the very fact that above and below bond to each other, though they are opposites, is through the nullification of their parameters and limitations, which is done through drawing forth the unlimited light of Hashem, blessed is He, who transcends them both. It can be said that these three matters may also be found in how a person fulfills the mitzvahs. If he fulfills them as commands people do by rote, it is because he has become accustomed to do it out of habit. Since the habit has become naturally ingrained in him, his fulfillment of the mitzvah also becomes due to the nature of his body and natural soul, which is the lower aspect in man. However, when he fulfills the commandment of Hashem, blessed is He, because he loves Him and desires to cleave to Him, and since it is not possible to truly cleave to Him except through the fulfillment of the 248 commands, the Bikudim, which are the 248 organs of the king, then his fulfillment of the commandment is due to his godly soul, the upper aspect of man. However, if he fulfills the mitzvahs for the sake of his name, of Hashem alone, meaning that he does not do them because of any benefit that he may gain from them, not even spiritual benefits, but rather only because they are the will of Hashem, blessed is He, then his fulfillment of the commandment is not due to his own existence at all, not even the existence of his soul, but instead he does them with complete sublimation to Hashem. This is because his only interest when doing the mitzvah is entirely to fulfill Hashem's supernal will, blessed is He. Chapter 5. We should add that the root of these three ways of fulfilling the commandments is because the mitzvahs themselves possess these three aspects, corresponding to the three ways of fulfilling the commandments. To further explain the giving of the commandments below, our sages of blessed memory stated, the Torah was only given in order to refine the creatures. In other words, the intention in the giving of the commandments, the mitzvahs, is not for the commandment themselves, but rather for the purification and refinement of the faculties and organs of the person who fulfills them, as well as for the purification and refinement of the physical things of the world through which the commandments are performed. However, there is a lofty aspect of the mitzvahs, which is that they are the commands of the Holy One, blessed is He. This is as the sages of blessed memory stated. About the verse, he relates his words to Yaakov, his statutes, and his judgments to Israel. That what he himself does, he instructs Israel to do. In other words, the fact that the Holy One, blessed is He, fulfills the mitzvahs prior to instructing the Jewish people to do them, means that He does them of His own accord from above, as is also understood from this, that the 248 commands, the Bikudim, are the 248 organs of the king. In other words, when we say that the mitzvahs are His organs, so to speak, this is from the aspect of what He determined above. Thus, when the Jewish people fulfill the commandments that He does, they are walking on the ways of the Holy One, blessed is He, and cleave to Him. Through this, vitality is drawn to the person who fulfills them, As it states, you shall do my ordinances and keep my statutes to walk therein, which if a man shall do, he shall live by them. For through the performance of the mitzvahs, he cleaves to the Holy One, blessed is he, as mentioned above, which is the fulfillment of the verse, but you cleave to Hashem, your God, are all alive today. Now, this aspect of the mitzvahs, that they are the pathways of the Holy One, blessed is he, in that the Holy One, blessed is he, himself performs the mitzvahs, is higher than any relation to worlds. Therefore, the vitality that is drawn to the person who performs them comes to him from the aspect of how Hashem, blessed is he, transcends all worlds, soiv kol almim. In other words, by itself it is holy and transcends worlds, but nonetheless, through doing the mitzvahs, he lives by them and draws forth inner vitality. Nonetheless, even this aspect of the mitzvahs has form, and therefore the mitzvahs of this level are in a manner of division. That is, they are called the ways of Hashem, darchei Hashem, in the plural, and thus correspond to the division of the 248 organs of the king. In other words, the drawing forth of the vitality affected by each particular mitzvah is unique to that mitzvah. This is similar to the difference between the power of sight in the eye and the power of hearing in the ear. This is why it is possible for a person to perform the mitzvahs that the Holy One, blessed is he, does himself, because the 248 organs of man below correspond to the 248 organs of the king. As stated, let us make man in our form and in our likeness. However, there is an even loftier aspect in the commandment and the mitzvahs, which is that they are Hashem's supernal will, blessed is he, a desire that transcends reason. In that Hashem's desire is in all 613 commandments equally, higher than the division into 248 organs. Now, since this desire for the commandments is entirely beyond any comparison to the human being who fulfills them, which is certainly the case since it even is beyond the form of supernal man, therefore, relative to this level, as it is in and of itself, man takes up no space at all. This sublimation that before Hashem, blessed is he, one literally takes up no space, is the nullification of one's very existence. Bittul b'metzias. Moreover, even after the matter of command to man, through which he indeed is given existence, nonetheless his entire existence is solely to fulfill the command. Thus, through fulfilling the mitzvah, in that the term mitzvah means binding and bonding, savsa v'chibor, he becomes bound to the commander of the mitzvah, who is totally and completely beyond comparison to him altogether. Chapter 6, the final one for today. Now, the same principle also applies to the study of Torah, in that there likewise are three approaches to the study of Torah. This is to say that in addition to the three ways that exist in the commandment to study Torah, just like all other commandments, in Torah study itself there are also these three ways in a similar manner. If one learns Torah because of the wisdom and intellect that is in it, for the Torah is your wisdom and your understanding, even in the eyes of the nations, then his Torah study is due to the nature of his body and natural soul, in that he is an intellectual by nature and loves ideas. If one's Torah study is because the Torah is the intermediary that binds the Jewish people to the Holy One, blessed is he, as Zohar states, there are three bonds that are tied to one another. The Jewish people are bound to the Torah, and the Torah is bound to the Holy One, blessed is he. Thus, through Torah study, we bind ourselves to the Torah and to the Holy One, blessed is he. In such a case, one's Torah study is due to the soul that resides within him. In other words, even this level of Torah study is due to his own existence, in that his motivation is that he should be bonded to the Holy One, blessed is he. However, there is an even higher level of Torah study, and this is when one studies Torah not because of any elevation that he will derive through it, but rather because of the Torah itself. That is, he studies it because the Torah and the Holy One, blessed is he, are entirely one. So much so that it actually is one with his essential self, blessed is he. This is, as our sages of blessed memory stated, the words I am, Anochi, is an acronym for I have placed my soul in my writings. Ana, Nafshi, Kesavis, Yahavis. The word I, Ana, and my soul, Nafshi, refer to the essential self of Hashem himself. Blessed is he. Thus, the meaning of I have placed my soul in my writings is that he has written and given us his singular essential self, blessed is he, my soul, Ana Nafshi. And therefore, through Torah study, it is me, as Hashem, that you are taking. Therefore, just as the Holy One, blessed is he, is not an intermediary to anything, God forbid, but is the ultimate end in and of himself. In the same way, this is how it is within this level of Torah study. That is, when a person learns in this manner, his perspective is that the ultimate purpose of his Torah study is Torah itself. In other words, because he realizes that the Torah and the Holy One, blessed is He, are entirely one, this realization compels him to fully invest himself into the study of Torah without any calculations, even the calculation that through this he will bond with the Holy One, blessed is He. Through this he studies Torah in a state of utter nullification of self. And these three ways of Torah study are drawn down from three matters that exist in Torah itself. That is, the Torah is wisdom and intellect, meaning that it is the wisdom of the Holy One, blessed is He, that subsequently descends and becomes manifest within the intellect of man. Additionally, it is an intermediary that binds the Jewish people to the Holy One, blessed is He. And beyond that, the Torah and the Holy One, blessed is He, are entirely one. This concludes chapter 6 and the casting for today. I'll post this shortly and hope everyone has a wonderful day.